The entire NBA world knows the Lakers have an issue at center. But the thing is, I don't think the Lakers care. If you've been following the coverage of the Lakers since the Luka trade, there are two major talking points that have been unavoidable. First, you'll hear about how Luka and LeBron will be a tough fit offensively because there's only one ball, they're both ball-dominant guys, blah, blah, blah. And second, you'll hear about how bad their defense is going to be because they don't have a center behind the awful defenders that are Luka, Reeves, and LeBron. Now, I was sounded flippant about the offensive concerns because I think they're disingenuous. Anyone that thinks LeBron James and Luka Doncic can't fit together offensively are not being serious about basketball. Now, the defensive concerns, and more specifically the size concerns, were unavoidable to even the most biased of Laker fans. And as a proud, biased Laker fan myself, I'm happy to say that in the face of all this perceived adversity of the Luka era, the Lakers have been pretty average. In fact, the Lakers actually lost more games with Luka on the court than they've won, at least until the Denver game. These losses were so off-putting that I actually scrapped this video idea after the Hornets loss. I was pretty convinced before Luka actually debuted that the concerns of the defense and size were pretty significantly overblown. So convinced that I actually wrote like a full script for a previous version of this video about how the Lakers can shift their style of play and force teams to adjust to them as opposed to the other way around, but didn't really happen. In fact, they kind of lost in some of the most frustrating ways you can to two of the worst teams in the sport. And given the timing of the losses, given they were bookending the All-Star break, national media and Laker fans alike had the opportunity to get even more negative about the Lakers' immediate standing as a contender. And even worse, after that Charlotte loss and the back-to-back struggle win against Portland, they had a trip to Denver to face the Nuggets in the midst of all this. This was going to be one of the season-defining games regardless of outcome. And I think the Lakers showed us what they really can be as a unit. And more importantly, they showed us the one true answer to the center debate for this roster. They're better without one. Now, I can go on about this for a very long time, but I think it would be better to focus on the three major factors that make the centerless lifestyle a good choice for the Lakers. Number one, they're not actually centerless. I know this is kind of just a way of the entire point of the video, but I do have to mention it. Jackson Hayes is not a great basketball player, at all. But I think when people talk about players, especially role players, fans like to discuss what they can't do way more than they focus on what they can do. For example, you look at Jackson Hayes as a player, it's very easy to see an undersized 7-footer with zero self-creation, foul, and discipline issues on defense. But when you look at what he can do, you start to see that he could be actually helpful to a team. He's very light in the back pocket, but he's a legitimate lob threat in every PNR situation. And he's an agile enough defender to be viable in a switching and scrambling defense, which is what the Lakers, as we saw against Denver, very much employed. But he's not a perfect player, but Jackson Hayes is a legitimate NBA basketball player, and you play him for 20 minutes a night in an uber athletic, fast lineup like the Lakers have been doing, you'll see that it's not really such a bad thing to have a fast, agile center. Now that we have Jackson Hayes out of the way, we get to the real meat and potatoes of the issue. The Lakers are not small. Not really by a long shot. People hear small ball and immediately assume that it's like PJ Tucker playing at the 5 like he did for the Rockets in the bubble. But we're not really close to that. In fact, I think it's fair to argue that the Lakers are actually one of the biggest teams in the league for most minutes on the floor. At all times, the Lakers have a 6'7", 6'9" point guard, depending on Luka or LeBron, whoever's there, oftentimes playing with each other. Flanked by 2 or 3 wings at 6'8", you got Vando, Rui, DFS, and that's without the 25 minutes a night we get from Hayes, like I talked about before. These guys are all long, they're fast, and they're strong. The smallest guy on the floor for the Lakers most of the time is Austin Reeves at 6'5", or Gabe Vincent, who is legitimately small, definitely not going to argue anything against that, but he's more than making up for it on the perimeter defensively for sure, and now offensively as he's found his stroke. While they don't have the truly massive 7-foot presence, they're extremely fast. In fact, I would argue that this team, unless you had a legitimate elite defensive 7'2" big, which AD, as much as I love him, and I do genuinely think he's the best defender alive, for people like Jokic, you never guard them one-on-one, ever. So I would argue that having nobody that even fits that profile to guard guys like Jokic or Sabonis or any big, strong center that's legitimately offensively viable, it forces coaches to get creative. And that's what we saw against the Nuggets on Saturday. It was full creative coverages that caused havoc. People see guys like Rui or LeBron or Vando or DFS guarding Jokic and they're like, oh, that's barbecue chicken. Which I understand why people would think that. But you still have to understand that Rui's not small. He's not weak. He's just not 7'2", 280 or whatever Jokic is. He's like, these guys are long. They're strong. They're under Jokic's center of gravity. And all that on top of having good defensive instincts. And most importantly, the biggest difference between how the Lakers guarded Denver on Saturday and how they guarded them the previous 14 games where they lost in the exact same way was that Rui was not guarding Jokic one-on-one. Unbelievably, when the Lakers in the first series against the Nuggets, when they got swept in the Western Conference Finals, I remember Mike Malone was very upset at media for talking about how, oh, the Lakers switched Rui onto Jokic and he kind of struggled at the end of the game. That, for some reason, made Darvin Ham think that, oh, Rui can be there, AD can play off ball like all the other centers that win Defensive Player of the Year, and he'll just come over and swat. So the solution to Darvin Ham, the previous Lakers coach, was to play Jokic one-on-one with a 6'8" Rui Hachimura. That was like the fix for them. So when you think about how unsuccessful that was with Rui guarding Jokic, and Rui as a primary defender in an incredibly, probably one of the more successful game plans against the Nuggets that we've seen in this era for them. With this same exact primary defender, you have to look at what's the difference. You made the Lakers theoretically smaller, but somehow it worked way more. And that's because if you cannot guard a player one-on-one, which no one in the league can, no one can guard Jokic one-on-one, then you have to be creative. You have to apply a different style of play to win the matchup. The Lakers said, we cannot be as big as them at center. Just straight up, no one we cannot create a body to play against Jokic. But we have 5 to 6 guys that are 6'7", 6'8", and at least 4 of them fly around the ball. Sorry, Luka's not going to do that, but he was at least in position. He's big and strong. We will make everyone's life around Jokic hell, and we're going to make it hell for him to try to find these guys. He's going to have 2 to 3 people on him at all times. And while they might not be 7 foot, so people are going to think they're small, they're going to be 6'9", lanky, athletic, with legitimate defensive instincts. And that's such a game changer that I don't think people really process how much defense is about the team and the connectivity, and not so much about, hey, is your biggest guy 7 foot tall or not? And finally, as we talk about on-court results, the Lakers have been good on defense for a very long time. Like, since Christmas Day, they have the number 5 defensive rating in basketball. Since January 15th, which I believe math-wise is about 14, 15 games now, maybe a little more, they have the number 1 defensive rating in basketball. For over the last half of this season, the Lakers have been top 5 in basketball on defense. And that's accounting for every single stretch of different personnel, different everything, getting Jared Vanderbilt back, but missing him, trading for Dorian Finney-Smith, getting Gabe Vincent back fully healthy. Like, there's so many different variables except one. And the one variable that has not changed is the defensive production. They've been good for a long time defensively relative to the rest of the season. And now, as much as I love AD, you keep that defensive energy on the wing, which is something they haven't had in a very long time. You pick up Luka Doncic and just drop him in to a team that is truly humming. Like, I think my biggest fear as I think about this Lakers season in terms of media coverage, which I don't have legitimate fears, but for the sake of the video, my biggest fear is that teams see in like 3 weeks when the Lakers have won 10 of the last 12 games in the Luka Doncic era, everyone's like, oh, Luka, they got saved by Luka. They were the 4 seed when he got traded. So they just They put Luka Doncic on a team with the bones of a championship contender. They've been clicking for nearly 2 months, and now we get a chance to see an offensive potential that may never be seen again, paired with a defense that is eye-opening. The Lakers are scary, and I think the league will see that soon.